So let's now bring us up to speed. Where are we up to? We are talking specifically about a chamber located in the temple complex, and it's right here. It's called Chamber of Parhedrin. This was an ensuite in which the Kohen Gadol lived in for a week before Yom Kippur, removed from his home and from the world for two reasons: to avoid possible contact with death and become Tomei and become disqualified to serve on Yom Kippur. It takes a week to go through the process of purification, and also to train himself in the very arduous, taxing avodah that he's going to be doing on Yom Kippur. He doesn't sleep for 24 hours, and he's working from dawn till sunset. It's physically taxing and certainly spiritually. So he went through an intense week of preparation. So this chamber has historically two names. Initially, it was called the wooden chamber because it was made of wood, but we explained, according to the Rambam, lined, because you're not allowed to use wood exposed for the reason we explained last week. That's fact number one. Now, a question which remained fully not answered is, why make it of wood and then cover it? Just make it of stone like everything else. That remained on the table. Then we noted the name change. So here's some detail I didn't say last week. There are in Mishnayos, two tractates in the Mishnah that talk about this chamber, this suite. Masechta Midas. Midas means a measure. That's what it means. So there's a tractate that deals with the architectural design of the base, of its measures and its materials, etc. There, this chamber is called the wooden chamber. Lishka Sa'etz. Then we learn tractate Yuma that deals exclusively with Yuma, means the day. It's referring to Yom Kippur. So it's talking about the Kohen Gadol, of course, and he's the focus and what he does. That same chamber has got a new name. It's called Parhedrin. The chamber of, and not even a Hebrew word. What is this? So the Gemara explains. For centuries, during the first temple and in the beginning of the second temple, when they rebuilt it, the chamber was called the wooden chamber because it was made of wood and covered. We haven't answered why it was covered. Leave it exposed. But then it was changed towards the end of the second temple. What happened? It's a reflection of the sad times. The second Beis HaMikdash was under Roman rule and eventually destroyed by the Romans. Now, the Romans had no designs to control religious life or anything. They just wanted Jews to pay their taxes and to have a station for their armies to conquest the world. This is in parenthesis, unlike the Greeks. Earlier, the Greek occupation of Israel was a desire to absorb, literally, Israel into the Greek Empire, to enlighten the Jews. It was a spiritual battle. It was a spiritual battle. So what happened? Which is the strange thing. The Romans keep Shabbos before, don't give a hoot. Just pay your taxes and be a subservient vassal state. Conquest physically, that's all. And the sages went along with it. It was a difficult time, but pay the taxes and that's all. But the group of young zealots in Jerusalem said, this is intolerable. We're not being under foreign rule. And they started a rebellion. The sages were not happy. They started a rebellion, and it ended in disaster. The Romans destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, and the terrible 2,000-year exile followed. So note, in the story of Hanukkah, under Greek rule, the Maccabees picked up arms, and they were a tiny minority. And they were successful and drove the mighty Greek army out. Why? Because the soul was under attack. When the soul was under attack, fight till the finish. When it's just a question of the foreign rule and money, don't resist that. That was successful. Hanukkah was successful, and the rebellion against Rome led to the slaughter of millions. Millions. 2 million Jews were slaughtered over that period, and many taken to the Colosseum and used as fodder for the slaves, etc. So it's quite interesting. When does a Jew pick up arms? They wanted it was a nationalistic movement in the story of Rome. Independence. I'm not going to be under your rule. No. You do tshuva, they'll leave. Not physical fighting. Hanukkah, pick up arms. At any rate, so all to say, towards the end of the Roman rule, things were going spiraling spiritually down. And the Kohanim, Roman controlled everything from a distance. They weren't hands-on, but they controlled everything. Even who's going to be the high priest. So the Kohanim at the time bribed, paid for the position. And the Romans are only too happy to take the money from the highest bidder. Okay, you're the Kohen Gadol. And therefore, parhedrin, as we told you last week, is a Greek term. It refers to the officer, the high-ranking officers by the king, by Caesar, that he would change every year. Why would he do that? No one should get too comfortable positions of power. So there was a big turnover of Kohanim Gadolim. Why? Because they died. Because if a Kohen is not a tzaddik and not righteous, and he goes into the Holy of Holies in Yom Kippur, he either died on the spot, or he was pulled out by a chain. Or he died in the course of a year. That's why they put a chain around his ankle because they couldn't go in and get him. So it's a reflection of the tragedy of the day that there was a big turnover of high priests. So they changed the name in the Mishnah, in Masechta Yom, but it's not called Lishkas Ha'etz, it's called Lishkas Parhedrin. Just like in the turnover of the king's officers in Rome, here's a turnover of high priests. So the Rebbe asks, it happened, there's a terrible thing. We should immortalize it and call it that. And in which tractate? Yuma, that deals with Yom Kippur, and we're so careful not to say anything derogatory about a fellow Jew, about anybody who want to invoke merits. And here we're invoking the opposite of merit. The Kohen Gadol representing everybody in a chamber called Parhedrin. And furthermore, not every high priest even then was not a tzaddik. Some served for decades, year after year. So why is a righteous, a tzaddik, Kohen Gadol, suffer the humility of being in a chamber like we expect you to die? Parhedrin. The whole thing is very strange. So the first answers we said, I think we started last week. Actually, the name Parhedrin is really a kind of a backhanded compliment. Why is it a compliment to these people? First, let me explain, they died. What does it mean that they died? I mean, they died. It's a fact that they died either then or soon after. So we've explained before, punishments in Torah are not like we punish. We punish, humans punish. You did that, society doesn't like it, you're going to hurt. It's going to hurt you so much that you won't do it, and it'll be, no one else will as well. It's going to be, what's the word, a deference for others. Reward, the same thing. We get money. What's money got to do with what you did? Whether you were a garbage collector, when we need them, or you're a surgeon, you get paid. You get more or less. But what's the money got to do with what you did? Everybody likes money. With money, you do what you want. So nothing to do with what you did, not your sin, the jail, or the fine, and not the good thing you did. But not so in Torah. With God, reward and punishment is consequence. It's consequence. This is what you bring on yourself. Example would be if you eat well and you exercise and you feel good, that's a reward. That's what happens when you eat well and you exercise. If you eat fat and you eat candies and you get cavities and you get obese, a punishment. Yeah, it's a consequence. That's what it is spiritually. Their death was a consequence. If you're not worthy, you become overwhelmed with this revelation and your soul will spill out. If not immediately, it's being agitated that it'll happen. So here's a compliment to them. Why are you going in there? You know tzaddik. You know your friend, the other Kohen Gadol. He went in and died that right away or that year. I'm talking about the ones that were not righteous. And you're vying, you're paying for it. So what is this of you telling us? These were people that it was worth it to risk his life to be one moment on Yom Kippur in the Holy of Holies and know God in the deepest way. That's pretty noble. How many people are going to do this? So there's a backhanded compliment, the Parhedrin, every year, whatever is another one. But why? Because this is a Yid who wants to know the Eibishter. And even though he knows he may not be able to contain it, look what happened. Worth it. So that's one level of answer. But still not entirely satisfactory, because the fact is, it's a turnover. It's a new, it reflects the fact there's another Kohen Gadol. There were many new ones each year. So why is that? So on your page, friends, and I'll get to the depth of it. On your page, I want you to look at the second to last quote. It's from Vayikra Pashas Acharei Mos, which deals with the service of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur in the Beis HaMikdash, and it says, and Aaron shall come into the tent of meeting, which means the Mikdash, and shall put off the linen garments which he put on when he went into the holy place, the Holy of Holies, and shall leave them there, which means when he went into the Holy of Holies, Yom Kippur, he didn't go with his golden vestments. He went with a simple tunic of an ordinary Kohen. So the Torah is saying that simple white garments that he wore when he went in, he shall leave them there. And the Rashi says from the Gemara, look at the bottom, they were not to be used again, even on the subsequent Day of Atonement. V'nicham sham, you don't use it again. So the question is, why not? He wore it for maybe half an hour, and maybe less. We don't waste. It's a nice thing. Like you have a kittel. You wear your kittel every year. Yom Kippur at the Seder, the new kittel every year. You shouldn't. It's a waste. And you want to use if you have your father's kittel, your Zayda's kittel, it's a wonderful thing. No, the Torah says, this is his kittel, this is his white clothes. He cannot wear it the same year. Answer. As we learn in Tanya, there are spiritual garments. What are my spiritual garments? What's a garment? A garment is extraneous to my body, and I don't need the garment for me. I need it because it's cold outside or it's hot, or more important, I'm engaging people. So you have to be clothed. It's all the way we're interacting with the world outside ourselves. And as we learned, there's three garments. Action, you're leaving a mark that you walk away. That's obviously very external. Speech, you don't know what's in my mind and head, so I got to tell you the words. Even thought is a garment. What's thought? Thought is an internal conversation where you're processing what you understand, what you feel. It's an internal office memo garment. What's the Torah saying? You can't wear the same garments next year. The Torah is saying, Gewalt and Geschrigen. You got to come out of Yom Kippur with a complete transformation. The way you think and you allow yourself to think, no longer. The words that come out of my mouth that I gave myself, I can talk this way, no longer. And your actions have to change. There's got to be radical change. That's the meaning of leave those garments there. Do not put them back on. Then you, God forbid, there's a waste of Yom Kippur. Oh, God forbid, a waste of going to the Holy of Holies. You went into the Holy of Holies. You, Kohen Gadol, must come out and inspire everyone around you that the old me, no longer. My thoughts, my words, my action. That's the meaning here. So now, starting to get our answer. Parhedra means like there's a new guy. Yeah. Physically, it's the same person, but not spiritually. So the name of the chamber, which means a new officer, is true. That's what Yom Kippur needs to be. Yom Kippur needs to be that you're not the same Yid that walked into Yom Kippur that came out. You're the same Yid, but not the same behavior, the whole way you interact with your wife, your children, the world, everything. So that answers, the name Parhedrin actually is, that's really what Yom Kippur is all about. But now we're left with, but that name only was changed later. And for the longest time was called the Chamber of the Wood. And why was it made of wood altogether? So look at the bottom. I think we quoted this. Number one, the Kohen Gadol's chamber was the chamber of wood because wood, the tree, is the longest living entity that exists. As I think we said last week, the redwood, the trees in the redwood forest in California, the oldest living entity that we know that's living, And they're 6,000 years old, by the way, which is the age, that's the age of the world, because every year it adds a ring. So what's the point? Number one, physical level. Why is this chamber made of wood? Make it out of stone. Because he has to bring long life to the people. And the tree produces fruit, long life producing fruit. But then it's covered. Let me explain why it's covered. Not just because you can't have wood protruding, which is last week. Now we're explaining deeper. The tree represents the tzaddik. The tree represents the tzaddik. The tree adds a ring every year. The tzaddik grows and grows and brings shade, light, and fruit. The tzaddik katoma yifrach. The tzaddik, like the date palm, blossoms. The Baal Tshuva is radical. The tree is not the symbol of the Baal Tshuva. Tree is steady, progressive growth. Baal Tshuva is like yesterday like this, and today, all of a sudden, hello, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm not talking. It's radical. Yom Kippur is about radical change. Now here's the paradox. The time of the first Beis HaMikdash, where people were basically tzaddikim overall, that was the hallmark. It was called the chamber of wood because that was a description of the people and the high priest every year growing nicely, predictable growth. Here's the paradox. When it came to the second Beis HaMikdash and a big corruption, yes, but guess what? At a time of corruption when the Yetzer Hara is gotten us in his grips, that's the time when we can make the real radical change. It's hard for a tzaddik to make radical change because he's a good guy. Everything is good. He could, but it's very difficult. But for the sinner, like, there's no option. It's just got to be a radical change. And that's God's biggest delight. That's the biggest achievement, is when it's radical. God wants radical revolution. So the second Beis HaMikdash, the name is called Parhedrin, is because Kindalach, our sages are saying, and it's Masechta Yuma. It's what Yom Kippur is all about. Yom Kippur is all about Parhedrin. Yom Kippur is all about when you sin and stumble, not when things go well, and your house is destroyed. It's going to be, but you can turn it around radically and bring the biggest light. And we will. We didn't do it then, we'll do it now. So the end result is the wood is there in the background, but not dismissing that tzaddik is avodah remains, but it's covered. That's not what this is all about ultimately. The neshama didn't come down just to plod along and be Mr. Nice Guy every day. The neshama came down to make mistakes, and there's going to be sin, and you can make a radical change. That's how you make the world a home for God. That's the great achievement. That's the great light. So we're covering the wood. It's going to be there. We need the tzaddikim to inspire us in the background. And we also need to know that that's the ideal. But we also need to know it's not going to happen. Except for the few righteous. So they're in the background, it's covered. What's our world? Parhedrin. Our world is, you sinned, you did the wrong thing, but know that it's part of the plan for a radical teshuvah. That's why God allowed it. That's why he made a Yetzer Hara. And that's the ultimate of Tractate Yuma. That's the ultimate of Yom Kippur. That's where it's called. So Midas, now just final. Tractate Midas, which deals with the construction. The word Midah means measured. That's the tzaddik. It's a measured, calculated, predictable growth. You know tomorrow exactly where he's going to be based on today. So it's called the chamber of the wood, the tree. Beautiful. Yuma, which is actually Aramaic. Yuma. We're not even using the Hebrew term because Yom Kippur is about taking the unholy and making it holy. That's what it's really all about. There it's called Parhedrin because that's where the radical change happens, and that's our generation. So it's a very powerful message. On the one hand, we're the lowest generation. We've done the stupidest things, etc., etc. So God says, because you're going to turn this around, you're going to become crazy. Crazy. What crazy means yesterday like this and today like this. Who you? You don't have to explain it, you have to justify it. It's okay. That's our generation. In a second. Yesterday wasn't Shem Shabbos. Today I'm Shem Shabbos. Yes, I didn't do it. Today I'm doing it. Yesterday I spoke this way. From now on I'm not talking this way anymore. That's our generation. That's the real revolution. That's the change. That's the ultimate Yom Kippur, and that's why it's called Parhedrin. There's more, but we're running out of time.
Oh, yeah.
The Rebbe explains Parhedrin. It breaks up the words. It's all of Gevura, Din, Par, Par. That's the Maila Baltshuva from below to above. Gevura, real might, real heroism is in radical change.